Wherever Rick Barry played, he was a tough cover. He's the only player to lead the NBA, ABA, and NCAA in scoring. After winning an ABA championship, he would win Finals MVP while leading the Golden State Warriors to a stunning upset victory in 1975.
Okay, now I want you people to sit down and relax, because what you're about to see, you may not believe even after you've seen it.
Rick Barry was the key. A superb offensive performer, Rick can hurt opponents anytime he's near the ball. And he hurt them all season long at the rate of over 30 points a game.
Barry, great basketball game, great defense, great passing. Hey, tremendous game by him.
My first game I played against Rick was in the ABA. And Rick said to me, I was 19 years old. I was a hot shot. I was, at that time, running into becoming the MVP of the league at that season. And Rick was like, I'm going to show you something, young fella. So he put 40 on me so easily. And he had 15 boards and like 8 assists. I'm like, wait a minute. I got to do the scouting report again.
How much talent does this guy have? I mean, he was, 30-plus point scorer in college and in the pros, 90-something% free throw shooter, captain of the teams everywhere that he went, an NBA champion and an NBA playoffs MVP.
What a story this has been. Underdogs all the way. The Warriors have done it. The Golden State Warriors have just won the NBA championship.
The experts had been right. It was a 4-game sweep, all right, but not by the team they had predicted.
No surprise, Sport Magazine has just named Rick Barry the most valuable player in the series.
Rick Barry, the all-round player. Perhaps that doesn't quite say it all. Let's use a much overworked term. Use it because it truly applies here. Rick Barry, superstar.
Rick Barry probably is, when people talk about the super players in the NBA, he's overlooked some. He's a guy that led the country in scoring in college at the University of Miami. In the ABA was MVP and the leading scorer. He led the scoring in the NBA. I mean, it's quite an establishment right there. And he was a great, great player as far as offensively. And one thing unique about him, another thing was that he shot foul shots from people that have never seen anybody shoot underhanded foul shots. That's how he shot foul shots his whole career, and I think he might have led the league at least one year in foul shooting.
Barry was second in scoring in the whole of the NBA. He also led the league from the free throw line.
Of course, with my two-handed, underhanded free throw, it's a lot easier, I feel, to get in a relaxed situation. Repetition in this game is really the key to success.
Is it repetition or superstition?
I think it's repetition.
Okay,
it's the same way, time after time after time, so that it becomes something that just gets embedded in your mind.
Actually, I was really very happy when I found out that I was drafted by the Warriors, and I recognized the fact that I would have an opportunity to play a lot of basketball for the Warriors if I showed that I had the ability to coach the players.
Rick was kind of a revolutionary. He was one of those guys that was all around. I mean, he could dribble, handle, pass, just about every facet of the game.
Barry's passing ability is sometimes overlooked, but he feeds Charles Dudley and then Jeff Mullins for 2 easy Warrior baskets.
But the mark of his all-round talent was the fact that he was also 5th in the entire NBA in assists, and some of those were more dazzling even than his scoring.
Whether it was in the NBA or the ABA, and he spent a lot of time in both of those leagues, Rick Barry was simply one of the great scorers in basketball history.
Well, during his prime, he was definitely the best small forward in the NBA because he was a great scorer. He could set up his shot, knew his spots on the floor, led the NBA in scoring once, but he was always also a very gifted passer. He knew where his teammates were, and from the small forward position, you could even argue he was sort of like a point forward. The ball's in his hands a lot. He made a lot of decisions for the Warriors.
With Rick Barry, by any means necessary to win a game, even if it happened to be a little underhanded,
But when you talk about some of the iconic shots in NBA history, you had the skyhook, obviously. But the underhanded free throw? Really? Well, he was taught that by his father growing up in New Jersey because his free throw shooting wasn't very good. And Rick was sort of like, I don't know, the kids are going to make fun of me, whatever. And his father looked at him and said, son, if the ball goes in, they're not going to say anything. And they didn't say anything in the NBA either. He shot 90% using that form.
Yeah, couldn't say much because that ball went in a lot for Rick Barry.
Rick Barry was as great a forward as the NBA saw during that period of time. His athleticism, his ability to score, his growth as a basketball player. For the most part, he was one that wanted to drive to the basket, get fouled, and he always had, if you remember, shot the ball underhanded. One of the few that ever did, and he shot about 90%. But Rick became a great jump shooter. And besides that, he even became such a rounded player, being able to pass and help his teammates even more so. So he was a great player and helped lead his team a few years later to a world championship and won MVP in the playoffs.
I mean, he was a guy that, you talking about hard to guard, was hard to guard. Okay, you couldn't foul him, okay, because I don't know if he still holds that foul shooting record and stuff like that, but you couldn't foul him. Plus, he knew the game. There was a lot of guys back then that knew how to get to the line, but wanted to win, okay? And you talk about Rick could score when he was with the Nets. Lou Conasecca was coaching him. He could play. I saw him play because he was out of Nassau Coliseum. But Rick Barry was this ultimate basketball player, you know, a thinker all the time, and perfection, Mr. Perfection. That was Rick Barry.
How does Rick Barry want the historians of basketball to write about him?
I would just like them to say that Rick Barry was a fine all-around basketball player, that he could do a little bit of everything and do it well.